I was polishing the chandelier in the dining room when Richard walked in with his guests. The same chandelier I had picked out at an estate sale in 1995. The one I'd haggled down from $2,800 to $1,900 because we were still paying off the mortgage back then. Now I stood on a stepladder with a rag in my hand, invisible. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. And subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Claire, make sure you get the crystal drops, Richard said without looking at me. Vanessa hates when they're dusty. I kept my eyes on the glass. 28 years of marriage, and he talked to me like I was furniture. The 6 people settling around the table were his business partners from the Columbus office. I recognized 2 of them. They'd been at our 30th anniversary party 3 years ago, back when I was still Mrs. Teller. Is that the same woman who used to? One of them started. Yes, Richard cut him off, his voice light and amused. Life takes interesting turns, doesn't it? Vanessa appeared in the doorway wearing the Versace dress I'd seen her post on Instagram last week. 34 years old, blonde hair that cost $600 every 6 weeks at that salon on High Street. She'd been Richard's secretary for 2 years before the divorce papers arrived. Claire, we're ready for the first course, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I climbed down from the ladder. My knees ached. At 62, I wasn't supposed to be climbing ladders for 4 hours straight, but the cleaning service charged $180 per visit, and I needed every dollar. In the kitchen, I plated the salmon I'd prepared earlier, herb-crusted, the way Richard liked it. The same recipe I'd made for 18 years of dinner parties when this was my kitchen, my house, my life. The swinging door to the dining room stayed open just enough that I could hear them talking. Richard, you've really moved up in the world, someone said. New wife, business expansion, even got yourself a maid who knows exactly how you like things. Everyone laughed. The sound carried across 30 feet of marble floor and hit me like a slap. I brought out the plates 2 at a time. The guests barely glanced at me as I set the food down. I'd fed some of these people 100 times. Now I was just hands carrying dishes. You know what I've always said, Richard announced, leaning back in his chair. His voice had that particular quality he used when he wanted everyone to pay attention. Some people are born to lead. Some people are born to serve. He looked directly at me as I placed his plate in front of him. Claire here, she was always more comfortable in the background. Weren't you, Claire? All those years playing housewife, you were just practicing for your true calling. He smiled at his guests. You were born to serve. It's in your DNA. The words landed somewhere deep in my chest. I kept my face blank, my hands steady. That's a bit harsh, Richard, one of the women said, but she was smiling. Honest, he corrected. I'm being honest. The divorce was the best thing that ever happened to both of us. She gets to do what she's good at. I get to actually live. Vanessa touched his arm. Baby, let's not make this awkward. It's not awkward, Richard said. Is it awkward, Claire? I met his eyes. 28 years of marriage, and I'd forgotten how cold they could be when he wanted something. No, Mr. Teller, I said quietly. See? He turned back to his guests. Perfect understanding. I returned to the kitchen. My hands were shaking now, so I ran them under cold water until they steadied. Through the door, I could hear Vanessa changing the subject, steering the conversation toward Richard's latest development project in German Village. The pasta course took 12 minutes to prepare. I focused on the mechanics. Boil water. Salt it properly. Fresh basil from the garden I'd planted 8 years ago. Vanessa had killed most of it through neglect, but the basil was stubborn, like me. When I brought out the plates, Richard was telling a story about our son. Ethan called last week, said he's coming to visit next month. First time in what, Claire? 8 months? 9, I said. 9 months since he's seen his own mother. You'd think he'd make more effort. Richard shook his head with exaggerated sympathy. But I guess when you choose to live like this, he gestured vaguely at me, people lose respect. One of the men cleared his throat. Richard, maybe... What? I'm stating facts. Claire chose to refuse the settlement I offered. She wanted to be independent. He practically spat the last word. Well, here we are. Independence looks like washing my floors. The truth was more complicated. The settlement he'd offered was $1,200 a month for 3 years. The lawyer I couldn't afford had said it was insulting. I'd refused it because I had to refuse it. Because accepting it meant accepting that 30 years of my life was worth $4,200. So now I cleaned houses. 4 houses a day, 5 days a week. I made $18,000 a year. I lived in a studio apartment in Clintonville that smelled like mold and old carpet. The divorce had taken everything else. Dessert was tiramisu. I'd made it that morning in my apartment kitchen, the one with the broken oven and the refrigerator that hummed like a sick motor. It took 2 hours of work I wasn't being paid for, but Vanessa had requested it specifically. "This is incredible," one of the women said after the first bite. "Claire makes it well," Vanessa said generously, as if she were complimenting a dog for learning a trick. "You know what my father used to say?" Richard addressed the table again. "You can tell what a woman's worth by what she brings to a marriage." Claire brought competence. Vanessa brought ambition. He raised his wineglass. "I'll take ambition every time." They drank. I collected empty plates. At 10:45, I finished washing the dishes. My back hurt from standing, my hands were raw from hot water and soap, and I'd been awake since 5 that morning. Richard appeared in the kitchen doorway as I was putting away the last of the platters. He pulled out his wallet and counted out 6 $20 bills. "Here," he said, holding them out. "You did good work tonight." I took the money. $120 for 9 hours of labor. Below minimum wage, but I needed it. "Thank you, Mr. Teller." "You know, Claire," he said, leaning against the counter, "I do feel a little bad about how things worked out. You gave me the best years of your life, and now you're here." He gestured around the kitchen. "But that's just how life goes sometimes. People find their level." I folded the bills carefully and put them in my apron pocket. "Is there anything else you need tonight, Mr. Teller?" He studied me for a long moment, something calculating in his expression. "No. You can go." He paused. "Actually, Vanessa wants you here Thursday at 6. We're having another dinner party. Same menu." "I'll be here." I gathered my cleaning supplies and headed toward the service entrance. My car was parked in the driveway, a 2004 Honda Civic with 187,000 miles and a check engine light that had been on for 9 months. I was almost at the door when my phone rang. The number was local but unfamiliar. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Teller?" A man's voice, formal and careful. "It's Ms. Hartwell now," I said. I'd taken back my maiden name after the divorce. "My apologies. Ms. Hartwell. My name is James Morrison. I'm an attorney with Morrison and Associates. I need to speak with you urgently about a legal matter." My stomach dropped. Lawyers meant trouble. "What kind of legal matter?" "It's regarding an estate settlement. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Would you be available tomorrow at 10? "I work tomorrow." "This is time-sensitive, Ms. Hartwell. I believe you'll want to hear what I have to say." Through the kitchen window, I could see Richard and Vanessa laughing with their guests. The chandelier I'd just cleaned sparkled above them like a trophy. "What's this about?" "Your biological father, Ms. Hartwell, William Ashford. He passed away 3 months ago and you're named as the sole beneficiary of his estate." The phone felt suddenly heavy in my hand. "I think you have the wrong person. My father was Thomas Hartwell. He died in 1989. Thomas Hartwell was your adoptive father. William Ashford was your biological father. He's left you a substantial inheritance, but there are conditions we need to discuss immediately." Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned to see Richard standing in the hallway watching me. "Who are you talking to?" he demanded. I covered the phone's mouthpiece. "Wrong number." His eyes narrowed, but before he could say anything, he reached out and plucked the phone from my hand. "This is Richard Teller. Who is this?" He listened for a moment, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion to something harder to read. "I see. Well, Ms. Hartwell doesn't have time for this right now. She has work to do." He ended the call and handed the phone back to me. "Spam call? Probably a scam." "How do you know?" "Because lawyers don't call at 11 at night about inheritances, Claire. They're trying to steal your identity, what little of it is worth stealing." He smiled without warmth. "You should be more careful. You can't afford to lose what you have left." He walked back toward the dining room. I stood alone in the hallway holding my phone, my heart pounding against my ribs. "You don't have time for this right now. She has work to do, not she doesn't. She has. as if he had the right to decide how I spent my time, as if I belonged to him still. I stepped outside into the November cold. The trees I'd planted along the driveway had lost most of their leaves. One of them, the oak near the garage, had a broken branch hanging at an ugly angle. Nobody had bothered to trim it. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Ms. Hartwell, this is James Morrison. I apologize for the interruption. The matter is urgent. Your biological father left you $60 million and the deed to the property at 847 Riverside Drive, Columbus. OH. That's the address where you were tonight, but there is one condition. Call me tomorrow, please. I read the message 3 times. $60 million, the deed to 847 Riverside Drive. This house. The house where I'd just spent 9 hours being humiliated. I looked back at the mansion, at the golden light spilling from the windows, at the life I'd lost and the people who'd taken it from me. Then I got in my car and drove away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my Murphy bed in the studio apartment, staring at the text message until my eyes burned. $60 million. The house. My house. At 6 a.m, I called the number James Morrison had left. Ms. Hartwell, he answered on the second ring. I was hoping you'd call early. Tell me this isn't a scam. It's not a scam. Can you come to my office at 9? I have all the documentation ready. I looked at my phone calendar. I was scheduled to clean Mrs. Patterson's house in Bexley at 9, then the Hoffman's place in Upper Arlington at noon. If I canceled, I'd lose $140 for the day. I'll be there, I said. Morrison and Associates occupied the top floor of a building on Broad Street. The receptionist, a young woman in a sharp suit, looked at me like I'd walked in from a homeless shelter. My cleaning clothes, my worn sneakers, my hair pulled back with a rubber band. I have an appointment with Mr. Morrison, I said. She checked her computer screen. Ms. Hartwell? Yes. Her expression shifted slightly. Not quite respect, but something closer to curiosity. He's expecting you. Third door on the left. James Morrison was 73 years old with white hair and the kind of face that had seen too many difficult conversations. He stood when I entered. Ms. Hartwell, thank you for coming. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Please, sit down. I sat. The chair was more comfortable than anything I'd sat in for 2 years. Morrison opened a file folder thick with documents. I'll get straight to the point. William Ashford died on August 14th of this year. He was 86 years old. In his final months, he hired private investigators to locate you. Why? Because he was your biological father, and he wanted to make amends before he died. Morrison slid a photograph across the desk. This is William with your mother, Catherine Hartwell, in 1961. The photo showed a young man in a suit standing next to a woman I barely recognized. My mother had been dead for 15 years, but even in the faded color print, I could see the resemblance. Her eyes. My eyes. My mother never mentioned him. She couldn't. William was married when they had their affair. When Catherine became pregnant, William's wife threatened to destroy her reputation if she ever made the relationship public. So Catherine married Thomas Hartwell quickly, and he agreed to raise you as his own. I felt something cold settling in my chest. Thomas knew? Yes. He was a good man, Ms. Hartwell. He loved you as his daughter. I thought about the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd paid for my college education, who'd walked me down the aisle when I married Richard. He'd known all along, and he'd never said a word. What does William want from me? Morrison pulled out another document. Nothing. He wants to give you something. His entire estate. $60 million in liquid assets, plus a substantial real estate portfolio, including the house on Riverside Drive. Yes. He purchased that property in 1994 and placed it in a trust. When you married Richard Teller in 1995, William had the deed transferred to your name as a wedding gift. You've been the legal owner for 29 years. The room tilted slightly. That's impossible. Richard bought that house. No, Richard has been living in a house that belongs to you. The mortgage payments, the property taxes, all paid from a trust fund William established for your benefit. Your ex-husband never knew. I stared at the deed Morrison placed in front of me. Claire Marie Hartwell, sole owner. dated October 12th, 1994. Why didn't anyone tell me? William wanted you to have security without obligation. He thought if you knew about him, you might feel pressured to acknowledge him publicly. He wanted you to have a good life. That's all. Morrison paused. There is, however, a condition for you to receive the full inheritance. What condition? You must assume public control of all properties within 30 days. That means registering deeds, attending board meetings for the commercial properties, and personally notifying all current occupants of the change in ownership. William's instructions were specific. He wanted you to claim what's yours, openly. I thought about Richard's face last night when he took my phone. The casual cruelty, the assumption that he could control when I spoke and to whom. What happens if I don't meet the condition? The entire estate goes to the Columbus Foundation for Women's Services, a worthy cause, but not what William wanted. I looked at the photograph again. William Ashford and Catherine Hartwell, frozen in 1961, young and stupid and doomed. Can I see the full property list? Morrison handed me a spreadsheet. 12 commercial properties. The Riverside Drive Mansion, 2 apartment buildings in German Village, a shopping plaza in Dublin, a warehouse complex near the airport. One address jumped out at me, 2847 Chambers Road, Ethan's office building. My son works here, I said, pointing. I know. William kept track of his grandson. He was very proud of Ethan's success. I set the spreadsheet down carefully. How long have you known about me? William hired me 6 months before he died. He'd been watching you for years, Ms. Hartwell. He knew about your divorce. He knew Richard was bleeding you dry. He wanted to help, but he was dying, and he was afraid of disrupting your life. Morrison's voice softened. He watched you lose everything, and it killed him. Not everything, I said. I'm still alive. Yes, and now you have a choice. You can walk away from all of this, let the foundation have the money, and continue cleaning houses. Or you can take what's yours. I thought about Richard's words last night. You were born to serve. It's in your DNA. What do I need to do? Morrison smiled for the first time. Sign here. I left Morrison's office at 11 with copies of every document in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The November sun was bright and cold. People rushed past me on the sidewalk, bundled in expensive coats, carrying expensive coffee, living expensive lives. I was one of them now. I just didn't look like it yet. My phone rang. Richard's number, Claire. Vanessa says you didn't show up to clean today. I had an appointment. You should have called. She's very disappointed. We have guests coming Friday, and the house needs to be ready. I stood on the corner of Broad and High, watching traffic flow past. I won't be able to make it Friday. Silence. Then, excuse me? I have other commitments. Claire, you can't just cancel. We have an arrangement. The arrangement is over. You need this job. You need the money. I thought about the deed in my portfolio. Claire Marie Hartwell, sole owner. No, I said. I really don't. I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, I was parked outside Ethan's office building on Chambers Road. I hadn't seen my son in 9 months. He'd missed my birthday, missed Thanksgiving last year, missed every opportunity to see what his father had turned me into. The building was glass and steel, 8 stories of corporate prosperity. According to Morrison's documents, I owned all of it. I called Ethan's cell. It went to voicemail. Ethan, it's your mother. I'm downstairs in the parking lot. I need to talk to you. It's important. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I was about to leave when I saw him walking toward my car. 38 years old, wearing a suit that probably cost $2,000. He looked like his father. Same height, same walk, same expression of mild annoyance. He opened the passenger door and got in without greeting me. Mom, what's going on? I'm in the middle of a meeting. I need to ask you something. He glanced at his watch. Can it wait? I really don't have time. When was the last time you called me? He shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. A few weeks ago? 3 months. The last time we spoke was August 7th. You called to tell me you couldn't make it to my birthday dinner. I've been busy, Mom. The business is, I know. Your father tells me how busy you are every time I see him, which is every Thursday when I clean his house. Ethan's face flushed. That's not my fault. Did you know I clean his house? Did you know your father pays me $120 for 9 hours of work? Did you know Vanessa makes me use the service entrance? Mom, I don't want to get in the middle of this. You're already in the middle. You chose a side the day you stopped calling. That's not fair. No, it's not. None of this is fair. I reached into the portfolio and pulled out the document Morrison had given me. The deed to 2847 Chambers Road. Do you know who owns this building? Ethan glanced at the paper. Some investment company. Why? I do. I own it. I've owned it since 1994. He stared at me like I'd started speaking in tongues. That's impossible. Read the name on the deed. He took the document, his hands trembling slightly. I watched his eyes move across the page, watched the color drain from his face. I don't understand. My biological father died 3 months ago. He left me $60 million and a real estate portfolio worth another $40 million. This building is one of 12 properties I now own. Ethan set the deed down like it might explode. Your biological father? Mom, what are you talking about? Thomas Hartwell wasn't my real father. William Ashford was. And William spent the last 30 years making sure I had security, even when I didn't know it. Does Dad know? Not yet, but he will soon. Because I also own the house on Riverside Drive. The house your father thinks he bought. The house where I spent last night scrubbing floors while he humiliated me in front of his business partners. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. Jesus Christ. I need to know something, Ethan. Whose side are you on? Mom, that's not... Yes or no? Are you going to stand with your father when I take back what's mine? Or are you going to remember that I'm the one who raised you? This is crazy. You can't just... You're going to destroy him. He destroyed me first. Ethan reached for the door handle. I need to think about this. You have until Friday. That's when I'm notifying your father that he's living in my house. I'd like you there, but I'll do it without you if I have to. He got out of the car without another word. I watched him walk back toward the building, his shoulders tight with stress. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. You're making a mistake. Call me back. I deleted the message. Then I called James Morrison. I'm ready, I said. I want to move forward with everything. All the properties, public notification, all of it. Are you sure? Once we begin, there's no going back. I looked at the building where my son worked, at the life he'd built while forgetting about mine. I'm sure. Then we start tomorrow. I'll draw up the notices. I drove home through the late morning traffic. The studio apartment looked smaller than usual, the walls closing in, but I only had to stay here for a few more weeks. Morrison had already arranged for me to move into one of the German Village apartments. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a kitchen with working appliances. On my kitchen counter, next to the broken toaster, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my door. Inside was a note written in Vanessa's handwriting. Claire, Richard told me you quit. I want you to know there are no hard feelings. We all have to do what's best for ourselves. But I hope you'll reconsider. You're very good at what you do, and it would be a shame to throw away a reliable income over pride. Think about it. We'll pay you $150 per visit if you come back. V. I read it twice. Then I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I laughed. Ethan didn't call for 3 days. I counted each one, my phone sitting on the chipped counter in my studio apartment, silent as a grave. On the 4th day, Richard showed up at my door. I was folding laundry when I heard the knock. Through the peephole, I saw him standing in the hallway wearing a cashmere sweater that cost more than my rent. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Claire. His voice had that false warmth he used when he wanted something. We need to talk. About what? About whatever you told Ethan. He's been acting strange all week. Richard tried to look past me into the apartment. Can I come in? No. His jaw tightened. Fine. Ethan mentioned you made some wild claims about owning property. I want you to know, I understand the divorce was hard, but inventing stories isn't going to help. I kept my expression neutral. What stories? About some inheritance. About owning the house. Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist? I have documentation. Documentation of what? A scam? He softened his voice. Look, I know things have been rough. If you need money, I'll pay you more for the cleaning. $200 per visit. I thought about the portfolio in my closet. 12 properties. $60 million. I don't need your money, Richard. Everyone needs money, especially people living in places like this. He glanced at the stained carpet, the flickering lights. You're being stubborn. I think you should leave. Not until you tell me what you said to Ethan. I told him the truth, that William Ashford was my biological father, that he left me his estate, that I own the house on Riverside Drive. Richard stared at me, then laughed. That's insane. I bought that house. I paid the mortgage for 3 decades. No, you lived in it. There's a difference. I have the paperwork, the mortgage documents, the deed. Then look at the deed more carefully. Look at the name on the title. Something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe. You're lying. Call your lawyer. Ask him to pull the county records. See whose name is on it. Richard's face hardened. If you're trying to scam me, I'm not trying anything. I'm telling you what is. Then prove it. Show me this documentation. I could have. The portfolio was 10 feet away, but something stopped me. No, I said. You'll find out soon enough. When? When my lawyer serves you with notice. Should be Monday or Tuesday. The color drained from his face. Notice of what? That you're occupying my property without a lease. That you have 30 days to pay market rate rent or vacate. You can't do that. I can. I'm the owner. Richard pushed past me into the apartment. I stumbled back, catching myself on the kitchenette. He looked around with disgust. Where is it? Where's this documentation? Get out. Not until you show me. He moved toward the closet. I grabbed his arm. He shook me off and I hit the corner of the Murphy bed frame. Pain shot through my hip. Richard pulled open the closet and found the leather portfolio on the top shelf. I watched his face as he read, watched the confidence drain away, watched his hands start to shake. This is fake, he said, but his voice wavered. Call James Morrison if you don't believe me. His number's on the letterhead. Richard flipped through the pages. The deed, the trust documents, the property list. His face went from red to white to gray. You knew. While you were cleaning my house. You knew? I found out the night you ripped the phone from my hand. He sank onto the edge of my bed, still holding the portfolio. William Ashford. I met him once at a charity function in 1996. He never mentioned knowing you. He didn't want to complicate things. Richard looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw real fear in his eyes. You're going to destroy me. I'm going to take back what's mine. The house is worth $3 million. I've put another $1 million into renovations. You can't just... I can. And I will. Richard stood slowly. He still held the portfolio. I won't let you do this. I'll fight you in court. I'll prove you knew about the property during our marriage. Good luck proving I knew. I have 30 years of tax returns showing no rental income, no documentation of ownership at all. He moved toward the door, then stopped. What do you want? Money? Name your price. It's not about money. Everything's about money. No, some things are about dignity. Richard's face twisted. Dignity? You're a cleaning woman living in a slum. I do now. He left without another word, taking my portfolio with him. I locked the door and sat on the bed. My hip throbbed where I'd hit the frame. My phone rang. James Morrison. Ms. Hartwell, I just received a very angry call from Richard Teller's attorney. They want copies of all documentation. Richard was just here. He took my portfolio. That's fine. I have copies of everything. But Ms. Hartwell, are you sure you want to proceed? Once we serve notice, this becomes public. I thought about Richard's face when he realized I owned the house. I'm sure. Then I'll have the notices prepared for Monday. In the meantime, I'd recommend staying somewhere else this weekend. Mr. Teller knows where you live. The apartment in German Village is ready. I can have someone meet you there in an hour. The German Village apartment was on the 3rd floor of a renovated brick building. Hardwood floors, crown molding, windows overlooking tree-lined streets. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. The building manager, Sandra, handed me the keys. Mr. Morrison said utilities are already on. Grocery store 2 blocks south. You need anything? I'm in 1B. After she left, I walked through the empty rooms. In the master bedroom, I found an envelope on the windowsill. Inside was a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Dear Claire, I'm sorry I never had the courage to know you. I watched you grow into a remarkable woman. I watched you survive when everything fell apart. I couldn't help you then, but I can help you now. This is yours, all of it. Be free. Your father, William. The note was dated August 10th, 4 days before he died. I sat on the floor and cried for the first time since the divorce. Not gentle tears, but the kind that come from somewhere deep. I cried for the father I never knew, for the mother who'd kept his secret, for Thomas Hartwell, who'd loved me anyway, for 30 years with a man who'd never really seen me. When I was done, I called Ethan. He answered on the 4th ring. Mom, I'm sorry for ambushing you, for making you choose sides. Dad came to see me yesterday. He was furious. Said you're trying to steal his house. It's not his house. It never was. I know. I had my lawyer check the county records. Your name is on the deed since 1994. Ethan's voice was quiet. Why didn't you tell me about William Ashford? I didn't know. Not until 4 days ago. Dad says you're going to kick him out. I'm giving him options. He can pay rent, or he can leave. Mom, he's my father, and I'm your mother, the one who raised you, the one who cleaned his house while he laughed at me. Silence. Then, I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's true. What do you want from me? I want you to remember who I was before the divorce, before I became invisible. I want you to decide if that woman deserves better. And if I can't choose, then you've already chosen. I ended the call before he could respond. That night, I slept in the German village apartment on an air mattress Sandra loaned me. The building was quiet. No sirens, no shouting through walls, no smell of mildew. At 3 a.m, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Teller, this is Vanessa. Richard told me about the house, about William. I had nothing to do with how he treated you. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I blocked the number and went back to sleep. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I woke up in the German village apartment at 6, made coffee in a kitchen with working appliances, and watched the sun rise over the brick buildings across the street. At 9, James Morrison called. The notices have been delivered. Richard Teller received his at 8:47 this morning. His attorney called me 6 minutes later. What did he say? That this is harassment, that you're mentally unstable, that they'll fight this in court. Morrison paused. Ms. Hartwell, I need to prepare you. This is going to get ugly. I know. Richard's attorney is Thomas Brennan. He's expensive and he's ruthless. He'll try to prove you knew about the property during your marriage. If he succeeds, it becomes marital property subject to division. But I didn't know. I believe you, but we'll need to prove it. I'm going to need every document you have. Tax returns, bank statements, anything that shows you had no knowledge of the property or the trust. I have everything. I kept copies of all our financial records when we divorced. Good. Bring them to my office this afternoon. And Ms. Hartwell, one more thing. Richard filed a restraining order request this morning. He's claiming you threatened him. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I never threatened him. He says you told him you'd destroy him, that you became physically aggressive when he tried to leave your apartment. He pushed his way into my apartment. He went through my things without permission. I have a bruise on my hip where I hit the bed frame. Did you take photos? No. Take them now. Date stamp them. We'll need them. Morrison's voice was calm but firm. The restraining order hearing is Wednesday at 2. Can you be there? Yes. Wear something professional, conservative. We need the judge to see you as a property owner, not a cleaning woman. After we hung up, I took photos of the bruise on my hip. It had turned purple-black, the size of a fist. In the mirror, I looked older than 62, gray hair, tired eyes, skin that had seen too much sun from walking between cleaning jobs. I needed new clothes. The department store downtown had a sale on business attire. I spent $340 on 2 suits, 3 blouses, and a pair of low heels. The saleswoman, a young girl with perfect makeup, looked at me with barely concealed pity. "Are you starting a new job?" she asked as she rang up the purchase. "Something like that." In the dressing room, I tried on the navy suit. It fit well enough. I looked like someone's secretary, or someone's mother playing dress-up. But I didn't look like a cleaning woman. My phone rang. Ethan. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Dad called me screaming about a 30-day notice. He says you're kicking him out of his house." "It's not his house, Ethan. He's lived there for 30 years, in my house, without paying rent, without even knowing it wasn't his. This is insane. You're destroying him over a technicality." I sat down on the dressing room bench, still wearing the navy suit. "A technicality? Is that what you think this is? What else would you call it? Justice, maybe. Or consequences. Or just me finally taking back what was always mine. He doesn't have anywhere to go, Mom. He doesn't have the money to rent another place like that. Then he can downsize. Plenty of people live in apartments. With Vanessa? She's not going to live in an apartment. That's not my problem." Ethan's voice rose. "You're doing this to punish him. Admit it. This isn't about the house. It's about revenge." "You're right. It is about revenge. But not the way you think." I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. "It's about taking back my dignity. About showing him that I'm not nothing, that I never was, by making him homeless, by giving him the same choices he gave me. Adapt or leave. Figure it out or fail. He'll survive, Ethan, just like I did. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you're defending him." Silence on the line. Then, "What do you want me to say, Mom? That I choose you over him? That I'm on your side?" "I want you to tell me the truth. Did you know he was paying me below minimum wage to clean his house? Did you know Vanessa made me use the service entrance?" "No." "Did you ask?" More silence. "That's what I thought," I said, and ended the call. That afternoon, I brought 3 boxes of financial documents to Morrison's office. Tax returns from 1995 to 2023, bank statements showing my half of the marital accounts, pay stubs from every job I'd worked since the divorce. Morrison's paralegal, a woman named Karen, went through everything with methodical precision. "This is good," she said after 2 hours. "No property tax payments, no rental income reported, no indication whatsoever that you knew about the Riverside Drive property or any others. It supports your claim completely. What about Richard's claim that I threatened him? That's harder. It's your word against his. But the bruise helps. It shows he was physical with you, not the other way around." Morrison came in carrying another file. "Ms. Hartwell, I have news. Richard's attorney just sent over a settlement offer." "Already? He wants to resolve this quickly, before it becomes public." Morrison opened the file. "He's offering you $500,000 in exchange for signing the property over to Richard and dropping all claims." I almost laughed. $500,000 for a house worth $3 million and an estate worth $100 million? It's insulting, but it shows he's desperate. Morrison closed the file. "I recommend we counteroffer. You keep the house, he has 60 days to vacate instead of 30, and you waive any back rent claims." "No, Ms. Hartwell, no counteroffer. 30 days. Market rent or vacate. Those are the terms." Morrison studied me for a long moment. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Wednesday's restraining order hearing was held in a small courtroom that smelled like old wood and desperation. Richard sat with Thomas Brennan at the plaintiff's table, wearing his most expensive suit. I sat with Morrison, wearing my new Navy outfit. The judge was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. "Mr. Brennan, your client is requesting a restraining order against Ms. Hartwell. What are the grounds?" Brennan stood. "Your Honor, Ms. Hartwell has engaged in a campaign of harassment against my client. She's made threats, she's filed false property claims, and when my client attempted to reason with her, she became physically violent. Ms. Hartwell, how do you respond?" Morrison stood. "Your Honor, Ms. Hartwell is the legal owner of the property at 847 Riverside Drive. She has documentation proving ownership dating back to 1994. Mr. Teller has been living in her property for 29 years without her knowledge." When she discovered this and attempted to assert her legal rights, Mr. Teller forced his way into her apartment and physically assaulted her. "That's a lie," Richard said, standing up. "Mr. Teller, sit down," the judge said. She looked at me. "Miss Hartwell, do you have evidence of this alleged assault?" I stood and showed her the photos of my bruise. He pushed his way into my apartment. When I tried to stop him from going through my belongings, he shoved me. I hit the bed frame. The judge examined the photos. "When did this occur?" "Saturday afternoon, November 18th. "And you filed a police report?" "No, Your Honor." "Why not?" "Because I didn't want to escalate the situation. I just wanted him to leave." The judge turned to Richard. "Mr. Teller, did you enter Ms. Hartwell's residence on November 18th? Richard shifted in his seat. "Yes, but she invited me in." "I did not," I said. "Ms. Hartwell says she didn't. Do you have any witnesses who can verify your version of events?" "No, but did you put your hands on Ms. Hartwell?" She grabbed my arm first. I was defending myself. "From a woman 8 inches shorter and 50 pounds lighter than you?" The judge's voice was dry. "Mr. Brennan, I'm denying the restraining order. Furthermore, I'm issuing a warning to your client. If he enters Ms. Hartwell's residence again without permission, I'll issue a restraining order against him. Understood?" "Your Honor, this is—" "Understood, Mr. Teller?" Richard's jaw clenched. "Understood." "Good. Now, regarding the property dispute, I understand there's litigation pending?" "Yes, Your Honor," Morrison said. "Ms. Hartwell is asserting her legal ownership of multiple properties, including the residence Mr. Teller currently occupies, and Mr. Teller contests this." Brennan stood again. "Your Honor, we believe Ms. Hartwell knew about the property during her marriage to Mr. Teller, which would make it marital property subject to equitable division. Do you have evidence of that?" "We're still gathering evidence, but so no, you don't have evidence." The judge shuffled through her papers. "Gentlemen, Ms. Hartwell, I suggest you work this out between yourselves. If I see this case on my docket, I'm going to be very interested in why Mr. Teller has been living rent-free in someone else's house for 3 decades. Court is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, Richard cornered me on the steps. "This isn't over, Claire. I know. You think you've won because you have some paperwork, but I have resources. I have connections. I can make your life very difficult. More difficult than cleaning your toilets while you laughed at me?" His face reddened. "I gave you a job when no one else would. You gave me humiliation. There's a difference. I could have left you with nothing. The settlement I offered was generous. The settlement was $43,200 for 30 years of my life. That's $1,240 per year. That's less than I made cleaning your house." Richard stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent he'd worn for 20 years. "You're making a mistake. I'm giving you one last chance. Take the $500,000, sign over the house, walk away." "No. Then you'll lose everything. I'll drag this through court for years. I'll destroy you financially." "With what money? The house you can't afford to rent? The lifestyle you can't maintain?" Something flickered in his eyes. A realization, maybe. "You're enjoying this," he said. "No, I'm surviving it, just like you taught me to." Morrison appeared beside me. "Ms. Hartwell, we should go." I followed him to his car, leaving Richard standing on the courthouse steps, alone. That evening, I sat in my German village apartment with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of wine I'd bought for $12. Through the window I could see couples walking to dinner, families heading home, people living ordinary lives. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mom, it's Ethan. New number. Dad had his phone shut off. Can't pay the bill. He's asking to borrow $5,000. I don't know what to do." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Tell him to get a job. Cleaning work pays okay if you're not too proud." I hit send before I could stop myself. Ethan showed up Thursday morning without warning. I was still in my bathrobe, drinking coffee and reading property documents. "Mom, we need to talk." I let him in. He looked terrible. Dark circles, wrinkled shirt, the exhaustion of not sleeping. "When's the last time you slept?" 2 days ago, maybe." He sat without being invited. "Dad's falling apart. Vanessa left yesterday. Took her things and just left." I poured him coffee. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" Because it seems like you're getting exactly what you wanted. What I wanted was respect. I never wanted Richard to fall apart. But you're not stopping it. I sat across from him. Ethan, your father has 30 days. Pay market rent or leave. Those are reasonable terms. Market rent is $8,000 a month. He can't afford that. Then he needs to downsize. He's 64, Mom. Starting over at 64 is what I did at 60, I interrupted. When he divorced me with nothing. When I moved into a studio that smelled like mold. Don't talk to me about how hard it is to start over. Ethan rubbed his face. This isn't who you are. You don't know who I am. You haven't known for 2 years. That's not fair, but it's true. I set my coffee down. When's the last time you really asked how I was doing? He didn't answer. When's the last time you visited? Took me to dinner? Called just to talk? I've been busy. Everyone's busy. But busy is a choice. You chose not to make time for me. You could have called me. I did. 17 times in 6 months after the divorce. You answered 3 times. After that, I stopped trying. His face crumpled. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know. Because knowing meant choosing sides. It was easier to let me disappear. We sat in silence. Outside, a car alarm echoed down the street. Dad told me something yesterday, Ethan said finally. He said you laughed when you saw him at the courthouse, that you enjoyed watching him suffer. I didn't laugh. He said you did. Your father sees what he wants to see. Ethan looked around my apartment. The second-hand furniture, the unpainted walls. Is this what William Ashford wanted? For you to destroy Dad? William wanted me to have security, choices, to never be at someone else's mercy. I leaned forward. What's happening to your father is consequence. 30 years of living beyond his means in a house he never owned. He thought he owned it, because he assumed. Because he took for granted that everything was his. I paused. The way he took me for granted. Ethan stood and walked to the window. I found something yesterday, going through Dad's files, financial records from the divorce, and the settlement he offered you, $200 a month for 3 years. But there was another offer, the one his lawyer originally proposed, the one Dad rejected. I felt something cold settle. I never saw another offer. $3,500 a month for 10 years, plus half his business value, plus health insurance. It was fair, and Dad said no. Ethan's voice cracked. There's an email, Dad to his lawyer. It says, Claire needs to learn what it's like to actually work. Give her the minimum and let her figure out the rest. The room felt darker. He wanted me to suffer. He wanted you to fail, so he could feel justified. Ethan showed me his phone. This is from 3 months later. Dad asking his lawyer how to reduce alimony further. The lawyer said no, so Dad started paying you cash for cleaning, below minimum wage. I read the email twice. The casual cruelty. Why are you showing me this? Because I need to know what kind of man my father is, and I need you to see that I know. Ethan sat closer. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I didn't ask. I'm sorry I let 2 years go by. You couldn't have known. I should have. I'm your son. We sat in the morning light, the space between us smaller. What happens now? He asked. Now I decide what to do with everything, with my life. And Dad? That's up to him. He has choices. He just doesn't like them. Ethan nodded. I want to help you, with the properties. I know real estate, management. Let me help. Why? Because you're my mother. Because I owe you. Because I want to be part of your life again. I searched his face for manipulation, found only exhaustion and remorse. Okay. But Ethan, I need you to understand. I'm not doing this to hurt your father. I'm doing it because it's mine. Because William wanted me to have security. I understand. Do you? Because when this is over, your father will make you choose. I choose you, Ethan said quietly. I should have chosen you 2 years ago. That afternoon, we met with Morrison. He spread a map showing all 12 properties. The portfolio generates $4 million annually. Net income after expenses is about $1, $6 million per year. Ethan studied the map. Mom, this is serious wealth. What about the Riverside Drive house? I asked. Market rent is $8,000 monthly, but there's another option. Morrison pointed to a notation. William's will includes a clause about family occupancy. You can offer Richard below market rent. Say $3,000 monthly. It's a business arrangement. Why would I do that? Because it ends litigation immediately. Richard's lawyer is building a revenge narrative. If you offer reasonable terms, you undercut that. Ethan looked at me. It's your choice, Mom. I thought about Richard on the courthouse steps, the fear in his eyes. What if he can't afford $3,000? Then he needs to find somewhere else, Morrison said. But this establishes you're reasonable, not vindictive. Even though I have every right to be vindictive. Even though. I looked at the map. All the properties William had built over a lifetime. Offer him $4,000 monthly, 1-year lease, no renewal guaranteed. He pays on time or he's out. Morrison made a note. I'll draw up papers. And if he refuses, we proceed with eviction, but I think he'll accept. He has no other options. We left at 4. Ethan walked me to my car. That was generous, offering Dad the lease. It wasn't generous. It was practical. I don't want to be the villain. You're not the villain. You never were. Your father won't see it that way. I know. Ethan hesitated. I'm having dinner with him tonight. Should I tell him about the lease? Morrison will tell him officially tomorrow, but yes, mention it. Make sure he understands it's one time. Ethan hugged me. Something he hadn't done in 2 years. I'm proud of you, Mom, for fighting back, for not disappearing. After he left, I sat in my car watching people walk by. A woman my age with grocery bags, a young couple holding hands, an old man with a dog, normal people living normal lives. I wasn't sure I'd ever be normal again, but maybe that was okay. My phone buzzed. Morrison, Richard's lawyer just called. They want to meet tomorrow. I think they're ready to concede. I typed back, good, I'm ready to finish this. The settlement meeting was scheduled for Friday at 10. I woke at dawn and stood at the window watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Richard was making calculations, weighing options, realizing he had none. I dressed in the gray suit, the one that made me look like someone who owned things. Morrison called at 8. Richard's attorney sent their counteroffer. He'll accept $4,000 monthly if you agree to 5 years with guaranteed renewals. No. Ms. Hartwell, it's not unreasonable. 1 year, no guaranteed renewal. Those are my terms. He'll walk away. Then he can walk away from the house in 30 days. Morrison was quiet. You're sure? I've never been more sure. Then I'll tell them. See you at 10. Morrison's conference room overlooked Broad Street. Richard was already there when I arrived, sitting next to Thomas Brennan. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose, and there were new lines around his mouth. He didn't look at me when I sat down. Let's begin, Morrison said. Ms. Hartwell offers a 1-year lease at $4,000 monthly. First and last month, due upon signing. No guaranteed renewal. Brennan leaned forward. My client cannot commit without stability beyond 1 year. We propose 5 years with automatic renewal. No, I said. Richard finally looked at me. Claire, be reasonable. I can't plan around 1-year leases. I lived month to month for 2 years. You'll manage. That's different. How? I have a business to run, a reputation to maintain. Then buy your own house. Like everyone else. Brennan tried again. Ms. Hartwell, my client will pay fair market rent for reasonable security. 3 years. Final offer. I looked at Morrison. He gave a slight nod. 2 years, I said. Fixed rent of $4,500 monthly. No automatic renewal. At 2 years, we renegotiate or he leaves. Richard's jaw clenched. That's $108,000 over 2 years. For a house you never owned. For a house that was mine while you were humiliating me. Claire, do you remember what you said 3 weeks ago at your dinner party? I leaned forward. You said I was born to serve, that it was in my DNA. The room went silent. Do you remember how everyone laughed? How you looked at me like I was furniture? Richard's face reddened. I was joking. No, you were honest. Probably for the first time in years. I stood. 2 years at $4,500. Take it or leave it. You have until 5 today. I walked out before anyone could respond. I spent the afternoon at the Riverside Drive house. Morrison had given me keys. I wanted to see it again as an owner, not a servant. The chandelier I'd cleaned still sparkled. The kitchen still smelled faintly of herbs. The dining room where Richard had humiliated me was empty, the table bare. I walked through every room slowly. This was mine. Had always been mine. In the attic, I found boxes of old photographs. Our wedding, Ethan as a baby, family vacations, 30 years of a life that looked perfect from outside. I pulled out a photo from 1997. Richard and me at a charity gala, both smiling. I'd worn a green dress that night. I wondered when he'd stopped meaning it. My phone rang. Morrison. He accepted. 2 years at $4,500. First and last due by Monday. Good. Ms. Hartwell, one more thing. Richard's asking if he can speak with you, privately. His attorney thinks it might help with closure. I looked around the attic, at the boxes of memories. Tell him I'll be here for another hour. Richard arrived at 4:30. I met him at the front door. Thank you for seeing me, he said. I didn't invite him in. We stood in the foyer, 5 feet apart. What do you want, Richard? I wanted to apologize for the things I said, the way I treated you. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That we can be friends? I want you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. You made choices, Richard. You chose to divorce me. You chose an insulting settlement. You chose to pay me below minimum wage. You chose to humiliate me. I was angry. The divorce was hard for me too. You left me for your secretary. Don't pretend you were the victim. Richard's face hardened. I left because you had nothing left to give. You'd become boring, predictable, and now you need a place to live. I need to know why. Why you're doing this. Is it revenge? Money? What do you want from me? I looked at him and realized I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just emptiness where something used to be. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to understand something. For 30 years, I thought this house was ours. I thought I was building a life with you. I thought I mattered. You did matter. No. I was convenient, useful, but I didn't matter. I stepped back. You have 2 years here. After that, I'm selling this place. You can't. This is my home. This is my house. There's a difference. I closed the door before he could respond. That evening, Ethan came by with pizza and beer. We ate in comfortable silence. Dad called, he said finally. He said you were cruel today. Was I? I don't know. Were you? I was honest. Maybe that's the same thing to him. He's scared, Mom. Really scared. Then he'll learn, or he won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Ethan nodded. I talked to a property management company about your portfolio. They're good. I think you should meet with them. You don't want to do it? I want to help. But Mom, this is your life, your money, your decisions. You don't need me making them. I squeezed his hand. When did you get so smart? I had a good teacher. I just forgot for a while. 3 months later, I stood in my new office downtown. Morrison helped me set up a family foundation focused on helping divorced women over 50 rebuild their lives. Job training, legal assistance, temporary housing. The kind of help I'd needed 2 years ago. My first employee was Sandra, 58, recently divorced. She'd been working as a hotel maid. I don't have office experience, she'd said. Neither do I, I'd replied. We'll figure it out together. Ethan stopped by twice weekly to help with finances. Richard paid rent on time, though we hadn't spoken since that day. I'd moved into a 3-bedroom condo in the short north, started painting classes, joined a book club. I was learning who I was without Richard defining me. 6 months after the settlement, I threw a party in my condo. Small gathering, Ethan and his girlfriend, Sandra and her daughter, Morrison and his wife, women from book club. We ate food I'd cooked, drank wine I'd chosen, laughed about nothing important. Ethan raised his glass. To my mom, who survived being invisible and became impossible to ignore. Everyone drank. I felt tears, but good tears. Clean tears. Later, cleaning up, I stood at the window looking at city lights. Somewhere out there, Richard was probably sitting in the house that was mine, wondering how his life had gotten so small. I didn't feel sorry for him, but I didn't feel victorious either. I just felt free. I texted Ethan, "Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for coming back." His reply, "Thank you for letting me. Love you, Mom." I finished washing dishes. My dishes, in my kitchen, in my home. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, I was finally completely myself. Not a wife, not a maid, not invisible, just Claire. And that was enough. After my husband died in a car crash on our 40th anniversary, my sister invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. But when the turkey was served, she publicly announced that the baby in her arms was his and demanded half of his $250 million estate. I asked, "Are you serious?" When she said yes, I couldn't control my laugh. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The room went silent. 23 people staring at me like I'd lost my mind. My sister Pam stood there in her burgundy dress, cradling that baby like it was a winning lottery ticket, and I laughed so hard tears ran down my cheeks. Let me back up. Thomas died on October 15th. We were driving home from dinner at Giovanni's, the same restaurant where he'd proposed 40 years earlier. He'd reserved our usual table by the window, ordered the same wine, held my hand across the white tablecloth and told me I was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. The truck ran a red light at the intersection of Main and Crawford. Thomas saw it coming. He yanked the wheel hard to the left, putting himself between me and the impact. The doctors said he died instantly. I walked away with a broken collarbone and a cut above my eye that needed 12 stitches. For 6 weeks, I moved through life like a ghost. The funeral, the lawyers, the endless paperwork that comes with losing someone who built a $250 million empire from a single hardware store in 1985. Thomas had been careful about everything. His will was airtight. Everything came to me, with provisions for our son Brian after I passed. Then Pam called. "Ruthie, you shouldn't be alone for Thanksgiving. Come to my place. The whole family will be there." I should have known something was wrong. Pam hadn't called me Ruthie since we were teenagers. She'd barely spoken to me at the funeral, just a stiff hug and some mumbled condolences before she disappeared into the crowd of mourners. But I was tired. Tired of the empty house. Tired of reaching for Thomas in bed and finding cold sheets. Tired of cooking for one. So I said yes. Her house in Upper Arlington was packed when I arrived. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Neighbors. People I didn't recognize at all. The living room smelled like cinnamon and roasting turkey. Children ran between legs. Someone had put on Christmas music even though it was barely November. Brian was there with his wife, Jennifer. He hugged me at the door, but something felt off. His embrace was stiff, brief. Jennifer barely looked at me. Just a quick nod before she went to help Pam in the kitchen. "You okay?" I asked him. "Fine, Mom. Just tired." But his eyes told a different story. They kept darting toward the kitchen, toward Jennifer, like he was waiting for something. Dinner was called at 6. The dining room table had been extended with folding tables to accommodate everyone. I was seated at the far end, between my cousin Martha and a woman I'd never met who spent the entire first course talking about her gallbladder surgery. Pam sat at the head of the table, the seat Thomas would have occupied at our Thanksgivings. She was holding a baby I'd never seen before. A little girl, maybe 6 months old, with wispy dark hair and chubby cheeks. "Whose baby?" I asked Martha. She shrugged. "Pam's, apparently. News to me, too." I watched my sister throughout the meal, the way she held that child, the way she kept glancing in my direction with something that looked almost like triumph in her eyes. A cold feeling started spreading through my chest. The turkey was carved, plates were passed, and then Pam stood up, tapping her wine glass with a fork until the room fell quiet. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," she said, her voice carrying that theatrical quality she'd perfected over the years. "Especially my sister Ruth. I know this has been a difficult time for her." Murmured condolences around the table. I nodded, wanting this moment to be over. "But I have an announcement to make." Pam's smile widened. "Something I've been keeping secret for too long." She lifted the baby higher, turning so everyone could see. "This is Emma. She's 6 months old, and her father. She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes locking onto mine. Her father was Thomas Campbell, my sister's husband. The gasps around the table were audible. Martha's fork clattered against her plate. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I felt every pair of eyes in the room swing toward me, waiting for my reaction. Thomas and I were in love, Pam continued, her voice thick with false emotion. For over 2 years. He was going to leave Ruth. He told me so. But then the accident. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. He never got the chance. I sat frozen, not because I believed her, but because I couldn't understand why she would tell such an obvious lie. "And so," Pam said, straightening her shoulders, "I'm formally requesting what Emma deserves. Half of Thomas's estate, $250 million. Half of that should go to his daughter." The room was completely silent now. Even the children had stopped making noise, sensing the tension. I looked at Brian, my son, my only child. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Brian," I said quietly, "look at me." He didn't move. "Brian." Finally, he looked up, and what I saw in his face made my heart crack. Doubt, suspicion, pain. He believed her. My own son believed his aunt over his mother. "Are you serious?" I asked Pam, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "Completely serious." She shifted Emma to her other hip. "I have proof. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts. Thomas loved me, Ruth. I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but Emma deserves her inheritance." I stared at my sister, this woman I'd grown up with, shared a bedroom with until I was 18, stood beside at her wedding, held her hand through her divorce, lent money to when she lost her job 3 years ago. $40,000 I never asked her to repay. And then I started laughing. It bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest, uncontrollable and wild. I laughed until my sides hurt, until tears streamed down my face, until Pam's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to anger. "What's so funny?" she demanded. "You," I managed between gasps. "This whole thing. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I don't see what's amusing about Thomas had a vasectomy in 1988. I wiped my eyes, finally getting my breathing under control. 3 months after Brian was born, we decided 1 child was enough. The procedure was done at Cleveland Clinic. I have the medical records. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier. I watched the color drain from Pam's face. That's not possible," she stammered. "He never told me." "Why would he tell you? Why would my husband discuss his reproductive choices with my sister?" I stood up slowly, my legs surprisingly steady. "Whoever that baby's father is, Pam, it's not Thomas. It's physically impossible." Brian's head snapped up. "Mom, are you sure?" "I was there, Brian. I drove him to the appointment. I picked him up afterward. I changed the bandages for a week." I looked at my son, seeing the confusion warring with hope on his face. "Your father was many things, but a liar wasn't one of them. And neither am I." Pam's mouth opened and closed. The baby in her arms started fussing, perhaps sensing her holder's distress. Around the table, people were whispering, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "You're lying," Pam finally said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "You're making this up to protect his reputation." "I have nothing to protect. Thomas was a faithful husband for 40 years. The only reputation being destroyed here is yours." I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The grief that had been crushing me for 6 weeks had crystallized into something harder, colder. "I'm going to go now," I said to the room at large. "I apologize for the disruption to your Thanksgiving. Martha, the sweet potatoes were excellent." I walked toward the front door, my heels clicking against Pam's hardwood floors. I was almost there when I heard Brian's voice behind me. "Mom, wait." I turned. He was standing in the dining room doorway, Jennifer hovering behind him with an expression I couldn't read. "Is it true?" he asked. "About the vasectomy?" "Yes, Brian. It's true." "Then why would Aunt Pam say, I don't know. But I did know. I'd always known, even if I'd refused to see it. Your aunt has wanted what I have for as long as I can remember. My grades, my boyfriend, my husband, my life. I paused, feeling the weight of 40 years of sisterly competition pressing down on me. Apparently now she wants my money too. I left before Brian could respond. The November air hit my face like a slap, clearing my head. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I was calm enough to drive, my breath fogging the windows. Somewhere in that house, my sister was trying to explain away the unexplainable. My son was questioning everything he thought he knew, and I was sitting in a parking lot, realizing that the real tragedy wasn't losing Thomas. It was discovering how many people were willing to profit from his death. The drive home took 45 minutes. I spent every second of it thinking about the vasectomy records in my filing cabinet. The ones I'd kept for 35 years because Thomas always said you never throw away medical documents. He was right, as usual. When I got home, I went straight to his office. The room still smelled like him. Leather and coffee and the sandalwood aftershave he'd worn since 1983. I sat in his chair, behind the desk where he'd built his empire, and I pulled out the folder marked Medical Thomas. The records were all there. The consultation, the procedure notes. The follow-up confirming the vasectomy was successful. Everything dated and signed and absolutely irrefutably real. I took photos of each page with my phone. Then I put the originals back in the folder and locked them in the safe Thomas had installed behind his bookshelf. The combination was our anniversary date, October 15th, 1983. 40 years and 3 weeks ago. My phone buzzed, a text from Brian. "Mom, we need to talk. Call me." I didn't call him. Not yet. Instead, I sat in Thomas's chair until midnight, remembering the man who had loved me for 4 decades, the man who had never once given me reason to doubt him, the man who had taken a steering wheel to the chest because he couldn't bear the thought of me being hurt. And I wondered how my sister could possibly think I would believe she'd stolen him from me. As if Thomas were a sweater she could borrow and never return. As if 40 years of marriage meant nothing. The baby wasn't his. I knew that with absolute certainty, but someone's baby it was, and I was going to find out whose. The lawyer's letter arrived 3 days after Thanksgiving. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. A young man in a FedEx uniform handed me an envelope marked Urgent Legal Correspondence. I signed for it without thinking, my mind still foggy from another sleepless night. The letter was from Morrison, Walsh and Partners, a firm I'd never heard of, but the name at the bottom of the page made my blood run cold. On behalf of our client, Pamela Wilson, we hereby provide formal notice of intent to contest the estate of Thomas Edward Campbell, deceased. The words blurred together. Biological child, DNA evidence, paternity claim, equitable distribution. Pam wasn't backing down, despite the vasectomy, despite the impossibility of her claim. She was going forward with a legal challenge. I called Martin Reynolds, the attorney who had handled Thomas's estate planning for 20 years. "Ruth, I just received a copy of this myself," he said when I explained. "It's absurd. They're claiming they have DNA evidence linking Thomas to the child." "That's impossible. Thomas had a vasectomy in 1988. Do you have documentation?" "In my safe. Dated records from Cleveland Clinic." Martin was quiet for a moment. "Good. Keep those secure. Don't show them to anyone until we're ready." He paused. "Ruth, I have to ask. Is there any possibility at all, that Thomas might have had the procedure reversed?" "No." My voice was firm. "We discussed it once, years later, when we thought about having another child. The doctor said reversal was possible, but not guaranteed. Thomas decided it wasn't worth the risk of disappointment. We never pursued it. Then this claim will fail. It has to. But Ruth..." He hesitated. "These things can get ugly. Your sister seems determined." Ugly didn't begin to cover it. By the weekend, the family had fractured into camps. Cousin Martha called to express her support. Her voice hushed like she was reporting from a war zone. Half the family thinks Pam's telling the truth. They're saying Thomas always had a wandering eye, that you were naive. Thomas never looked at another woman in 40 years of marriage. I know that, honey. But Pam's been telling stories. Apparently, she has photos of them together. Text messages. Photos can be faked. Text messages can be written to anyone. I'm just telling you what's being said. People are taking sides. The hardest part wasn't the cousins or the distant relatives who suddenly had opinions about my marriage. It was Brian. He came to the house on Sunday afternoon, alone. Jennifer had other plans, he said. His face was drawn, older somehow than it had looked a week ago. He sat in Thomas's chair, something he'd never done while his father was alive, and stared at the floor for a long time before speaking. Mom, I need you to be honest with me. I've never been anything else. Were you and Dad? Were things good between you? I mean, really good? The question hit me like a physical blow. Brian, your father and I were married for 40 years. We had our disagreements like any couple, but we loved each other, completely. Then why would Aunt Pam say these things? Why would she make this up? I don't know what's in your aunt's heart. I stopped trying to understand her a long time ago. Brian looked up at me then, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. Doubt. Real, corrosive doubt. She showed me the photos, Mom. I went very still. What photos? Pictures of her and Dad. At dinner. At what looks like a hotel lobby. One of them hugging. Your father hugged hundreds of people. He was an affectionate man. These looked different. Different how? Brian shook his head. I don't know. Intimate, maybe. The way they were looking at each other. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled down a photo album. The one from Thomas's 60th birthday party 3 years ago. I flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for. This is your father hugging my colleague Sarah at his birthday dinner. I pointed to the image. And here he is with your cousin Rebecca. And here with the woman from his accounting department. Your father was a warm person. He made everyone feel special. That's why people loved him. Brian studied the photos. These aren't the same. Show me what Pam showed you. I don't have them. She only let me look. Convenient. I sat down across from him. Brian, your aunt is making claims that are medically impossible. Your father had a vasectomy before you were a year old. I have the records. Then show me. I hesitated. Martin had told me to keep the documents secure, but this was my son, my child, who was looking at me like I might be the liar instead of his aunt. Come with me. I led him to Thomas's office, opened the safe, handed him the folder. Brian read through the papers slowly. Consultation notes from Dr. William Henderson. Procedure documentation. Follow-up confirmation. Everything dated 1988. Everything bearing Thomas's signature. This could be old, he said quietly. He could have had it reversed later. He didn't. We discussed it. The doctor said reversal wasn't guaranteed, and your father didn't want to get our hopes up for nothing. But you don't have proof he didn't reverse it. I stared at my son, this boy I had carried in my body, nursed through fevers, driven to Little League games, helped with college applications. The boy who had stood at his father's grave 6 weeks ago and wept like his heart was breaking. Brian, why are you looking for reasons to believe your aunt over your mother? He flinched. I'm not. I just want to know the truth. The truth is that your father was a faithful husband. The truth is that your aunt is lying. The truth is that someone else is the father of that baby, and Pam is using her to try to steal money she didn't earn and doesn't deserve. Then why would she do this? Why would she destroy her relationship with you over a lie? Because Pam has always wanted what I have. She wanted our father's attention when we were children. She got it. She wanted my first boyfriend in high school. She took him. She wanted the life I built with Thomas, but she couldn't have it. So now she wants the money instead. Brian was quiet for a long moment. Mom, that sounds paranoid. Does it? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. 3 years ago, when Pam lost her job, I lent her $40,000. She's never paid back a cent. 5 years before that, I co-signed a loan for her condo. She defaulted. I paid it off so her credit wouldn't be ruined. When she got divorced, I paid for her lawyer because she was broke, and Stephen was threatening to leave her with nothing. I showed him the records, every transfer, every payment, every time I had bailed my sister out of her own messes. I have loved your aunt my entire life despite her flaws. I have given her money, time, support, everything she needed. And this is how she repays me, by trying to take what your father built, by trying to convince his own son that he was a cheater and a liar. Brian's face had gone pale. I didn't know about any of this. Because I never told you. I never wanted you to think poorly of family. Maybe that was a mistake. He stood up, the medical record still clutched in his hands. I need time to process this. Take all the time you need. But Brian? I waited until he looked at me. Remember who raised you. Remember who was there for every moment of your life. And remember who showed up 6 weeks after your father's funeral with a baby and a demand for money. He left without saying goodbye. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing around the corner, and I felt something shift in my chest, a wall going up where there used to be open space. That night, Jennifer called. Not Brian. Jennifer. Ruth, we need to talk about this situation. I was in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Again, what situation is that? The estate, the baby, all of it. Her voice was crisp, businesslike. Brian is torn apart over this. It's affecting his work, his health, our marriage. I'm sorry to hear that. Perhaps if his aunt stopped lying. Ruth, let's be practical. Whether the baby is Thomas's or not, fighting this in court will take years. It will drain the estate. It will destroy what's left of the family. She paused. Maybe it would be better to just settle. I sat up in bed. Settle. Give Pam something, enough to make her go away. 20 million, 30 million. It's a fraction of the total estate. Then everyone can move on. Let me make sure I understand. You're suggesting I give my lying sister $30 million to make her stop lying? I'm suggesting we find a practical solution. Here's a practical solution. Pam can take a DNA test. When it proves Thomas isn't the father, she can apologize, and we can all pretend this never happened. She won't agree to that. Why not? If she's so confident about her claim? Jennifer was silent. That's interesting, isn't it? I said. She's demanding half of a $250 million estate based on biological paternity, but she won't take a test that could prove her case instantly. The legal process is complicated. The legal process is simple. DNA doesn't lie. Your aunt-in-law does. I hung up before she could respond. Sleep didn't come that night either. I lay in bed, Thomas's pillow still smelling faintly of him, and I thought about the conversation with Jennifer, the careful phrasing, the push toward settlement, the casual suggestion that I should pay $30 million to make my problems disappear. Something was wrong. Something beyond Pam's obvious greed. The next morning I made a call I should have made weeks ago. Davidson Investigations. How may I help you? I need to speak with Ray Davidson. Tell him Ruth Campbell is calling. Ray had done security consulting for Thomas's company for 15 years. He'd also done some private work for us over the years, background checks on potential business partners, that sort of thing. He was thorough, discreet, and absolutely loyal to Thomas's memory. Ruth, he said when he came on the line, I've been wondering when you'd call. You've heard? Everyone's heard. Your sister's been making noise all over town, talking to reporters, posting on social media. My stomach clenched. Social media? Nothing direct, just vague posts about finally getting justice and the truth coming out. Enough to get people speculating. I closed my eyes. Ray, I need your help. Name it. I need to know who the father of that baby really is. And I need to know why my sister is so confident about a claim that's medically impossible. You have the vasectomy records? In my safe. Good. Don't let anyone else see them until I tell you. Not even your son. Too late for that. Ray was quiet for a moment. Ruth, I'm going to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Is there any possibility, any at all, that you're wrong about this? None. You're sure Thomas never had it reversed? I'm sure. And there's no way those medical records could be falsified? They're from Cleveland Clinic, dated 1988. You can verify them independently. Then your sister is either delusional or running a con. He paused. Based on what I know about Pamela Wilson, I'm betting on the con. That's what I need you to prove. I'll start digging today. But Ruth, be careful. People do desperate things when there's this much money involved. And your sister seems pretty desperate. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in Thomas's chair and looked around his office at the books he'd read, the awards he'd won, the photos of our life together covering every surface. Someone was trying to rewrite our history, to paint my husband as a cheater, to convince my son that his father's memory was a lie. I wasn't going to let that happen. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Something important. Something that connected Jennifer's strange phone call to Pam's impossible confidence to Brian's willingness to doubt me. The truth was out there. I just had to find it before it destroyed what was left of my family. December came in cold and gray. Columbus winters have a way of settling into your bones, making everything feel heavier than it should. I moved through the house like a stranger, avoiding rooms that held too many memories. Brian stopped calling. At first, I told myself he just needed space, time to process, time to sort through the lies and find his way back to the truth. But as the days turned into weeks, the silence became its own kind of answer. I tried calling him twice. The first time, Jennifer answered and said he was unavailable. The second time, it went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back. He never did. The isolation was worse than the grief. When Thomas died, I had people around me. Neighbors bringing casseroles. Friends sitting with me in the evenings. Brian checking in every day, sometimes twice. Now I had nothing but the sound of the furnace kicking on and off, and the occasional call from Ray Davidson with updates that led nowhere. The baby's birth certificate lists the father as unknown, he told me during one of our conversations. Pam gave birth at Grant Medical Center. Paid cash for everything. No insurance records to trace. Who pays cash for childbirth? Someone who doesn't want a paper trail. The legal proceedings moved forward with agonizing slowness. Pam's lawyers filed motion after motion, requesting document production, demanding depositions, asking for extensions. Martin told me it was a delay tactic, designed to wear me down, to make me consider settlement. She's betting you'll get tired, he said. That you'll decide it's easier to write a check than fight. I've never taken the easy way out of anything in my life. I know. But Ruth, you should prepare yourself. This could take years. Years. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Years of legal battles, years of family division, years of watching my son drift further away. The night before Christmas Eve, I found myself in Thomas's closet for the first time since his death. His suits still hung in neat rows, organized by color the way he liked them. His shoes were lined up on the shelf below. His ties hung from a rack on the inside of the door. I pressed my face against one of his jackets and breathed in. The scent was fading. Soon it would be gone entirely, and I would have nothing left of him but photographs and memories, and the money everyone seemed so desperate to take. That's when I noticed the shoebox. It was on the top shelf, pushed to the back, half hidden behind a stack of sweaters. I didn't remember ever seeing it before. Thomas wasn't a shoebox and memories kind of man. He kept everything organized in filing cabinets and cloud storage. I pulled it down and sat on the closet floor, my back against his shirts, my legs stretched out in front of me. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them written in Thomas's neat handwriting, all addressed to me. The first one was dated 20 years ago. My dearest Ruth, I'm writing this because there are things I've never been able to say out loud, things that feel too big for spoken words. I know about Pam. I know she tried to kiss me at your parents' anniversary party last year. I know she's been making comments about our marriage, suggesting you're too old for me, too boring, too whatever. I know she wants what you have. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. Pam is your sister, family. I know how much that means to you. So I kept my mouth shut, and I kept my distance from her, and I hoped she would eventually give up. But I need you to know, in case something ever happens to me. I have never loved anyone but you. I never will. Pam could offer me the world and I wouldn't take it. You are my world. I'm putting this letter in a box because I don't know how to give it to you. Maybe someday you'll find it. Maybe someday you'll need to read these words. Forever yours, Thomas. I sat there on the closet floor, tears streaming down my face, reading letter after letter. Thomas had been writing to me for 20 years, recording moments he wanted to remember, confessing fears he couldn't voice, expressing love in ways he found difficult to say. And throughout it all, one theme repeated: Pam. Your sister called again today, third time this week. I didn't answer. Pam showed up at the office, said she needed to talk about something important. I had security escort her out. I saw Pam at the grocery store. She made a comment about how tired you've been looking lately. Suggested maybe you were losing your edge. I told her you were more beautiful than the day I married you. She didn't like that. 20 years of my sister circling my husband like a shark. 20 years of Thomas deflecting her advances, protecting me from the truth of who she really was. The last letter was dated 3 months before his death. My darling Ruth, Pam came to the office again today. This time she said something that worried me. She mentioned Brian's wife, Jennifer. Said they'd become close friends. Said Jennifer understands things about our family that you and I refuse to see. I don't know what that means, but I don't like it. I've instructed Martin to make sure my will is airtight. Everything goes to you. No loopholes, no challenges. If something happens to me, I want you protected from anyone who might try to take what we've built. You probably think I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am, but I know your sister, Ruth. I've watched her for 40 years, and I know she won't stop until she gets what she wants. Whatever happens, remember, I chose you. Every day for 40 years, I chose you, and I would choose you for 40 more if time would let me. All my love forever, Thomas. I read that letter 5 times. Then I read it again. Jennifer and Pam, close friends, understanding things about the family. I thought about Jennifer's phone call suggesting I settle, her careful phrasing, her insistence that fighting would destroy the family. I thought about Brian's sudden doubt, his willingness to believe photos and stories over decades of lived experience. I thought about the shoebox hidden on the top shelf, as if Thomas knew I would need it someday. As if he was reaching out from beyond the grave to warn me. My husband had seen this coming. He'd tried to protect me, in his quiet way. And I had been too wrapped up in grief to see what was right in front of me. The next morning I called Ray Davidson. I need you to look into someone else, I said. Jennifer Campbell, my daughter-in-law. What am I looking for? Connections to my sister. Financial records. Anything that doesn't add up. This is going to get complicated, Ruth. If Brian finds out, Brian has already chosen his side. I need to know why. Ray was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll dig into Jennifer. But Ruth, whatever I find, it might make things worse before they get better. Things can't get much worse. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. In my experience, they always can. After we hung up, I went back to the shoebox. I read through every letter again, looking for details I might have missed. Names, dates, anything that could help me understand what my husband had seen that I'd been blind to. In one of the middle letters dated 12 years ago, I found something. Pam borrowed money from your parents again. $15,000 this time. Your mother told me at Sunday dinner. She was worried, said Pam always has some crisis that needs funding. She asked if I thought there was something wrong with her. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to your mother-in-law that her daughter is a bottomless pit of need? That no amount of money will ever be enough because the problem isn't financial. It's something deeper, something broken at her core? I just said I'd keep an eye on things. What else could I do? I set down the letter and stared at the wall. My mother had worried about Pam too, had seen the pattern even then. And she'd gone to Thomas, not me, because she knew how protective I was of my sister. Everyone had seen it, except me. I was the last to know. The last to understand what Pam really was. The last to accept that my love for my sister had blinded me to her true nature, and now that blindness had cost me my son. The house felt different after that night. Smaller somehow. Quieter. But also clearer, like the fog that had surrounded me since Thomas's death was finally lifting. I spent Christmas alone. No one called. No one came by. I made myself a simple dinner and watched old movies and pretended it was just another night. But inside, something was changing. The grief was still there, but it was making room for something else. Something harder and colder and more determined. My sister had taken enough from me. My trust, my peace, my son's belief in his own mother. She wasn't going to take Thomas's legacy too. I just needed to figure out how to stop her. Ray Davidson called on January 8th with news that changed everything. "I found the father," he said without preamble. I set down my coffee cup so hard it cracked against the counter. "Who?" "His name is Marcus Webb, 34 years old. Used to work at Thomas's company as a regional sales manager. Fired 18 months ago for falsifying expense reports." I don't remember that name. Thomas handled it personally, kept it quiet to avoid embarrassment for everyone involved. Webb had a family, kids. Thomas didn't want to ruin him entirely, just wanted him gone. So this Marcus Webb and Pam started seeing each other about 2 years ago. I found hotel records, credit card charges, even some photographs from a trip to Florida they took together last March. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. March. That would be about 9 months before the baby was born. Exactly. The pieces were falling into place. Marcus Webb, angry at Thomas for firing him. Pam, forever jealous of what I had. The two of them finding each other, recognizing a shared enemy. "There's more," Ray continued. "Webb's wife divorced him 6 months ago. She found out about Pam and kicked him out. He's been living in an apartment in Reynoldsburg ever since, barely making rent. Does he know about the baby? That's where it gets interesting. According to his ex-wife, Webb doesn't believe the baby is his. Pam told him she was seeing someone else at the same time. Someone wealthy and important. She was laying the groundwork. Making him think Thomas was the father, too. It looks that way. But here's the thing, Ruth. Webb is angry. At Pam for lying to him. At Thomas for firing him. At the world in general. And he's broke. I understood what Ray was suggesting. You think he might talk to us. I think he might talk to anyone who's willing to listen. And maybe pay for his time. Set up a meeting. 3 days later, I sat across from Marcus Webb in a coffee shop on the east side of town. He was younger than I expected, with tired eyes and a 3-day beard. His clothes were wrinkled. His hands shook slightly around his cup. "Mrs. Campbell," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry about your husband. Thank you. I didn't know about any of this when it started with Pam. She told me she was divorced, lonely, looking for someone who understood her, and you understood her." He laughed bitterly. "I thought I did. Turns out I was just convenient. A warm body while she was working on her real plan, which was getting close to someone at your husband's company, learning the business, finding weak spots." He shook his head. "She pumped me for information for months. Names, schedules, security protocols. I thought she was just interested in what I did. Stupid. What kind of information was she looking for specifically? Financial stuff mostly. How much the company was worth. How decisions got made. Who handled the money." He paused. "She was real interested in your husband's personal schedule. Where he went, who he met with, when he traveled." My blood ran cold. Why would she need to know that? She said she wanted to understand the business world better. Said maybe she could get a job there someday. Marcus met my eyes for the first time. But that wasn't it, was it? She was planning something. Yes, she was planning to claim my husband fathered her child. His face went white. "What?" I explained everything. The Thanksgiving announcement, the legal challenge, the demand for half the estate. "That's insane," Marcus said when I finished. "The baby is mine. I mean, I'm pretty sure. The timing is right." "Would you be willing to take a DNA test?" "Hell yes. I've been wanting one since the baby was born, but Pam keeps putting me off. Says the stress would be bad for Emma, that we should wait until everything settles down. She's stalling because she knows what the test will show." Marcus nodded slowly. "She played me. This whole time, she was using me to get pregnant, and then she was going to pass the baby off as someone else's. Not just someone else's, My husband's, a man worth $250 million. Jesus. He rubbed his face with both hands. I can't believe I was that stupid. You weren't stupid. You were manipulated by someone who's been perfecting her craft for 50 years. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $10,000. What's this? Compensation for your time and cooperation. I need you to take a DNA test. I need you to be willing to testify about your relationship with Pam. And I need you to keep this conversation confidential until my lawyer tells you otherwise. Marcus stared at the check. This is a lot of money. It's a fraction of what your testimony will save me, and it's fair payment for the truth. He took the check. I'll do whatever you need. That woman took 2 years of my life and made me believe she loved me. Turns out I was just a sperm donor for her scam. We shook hands. As I left the coffee shop, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The DNA test was arranged for the following week. Ray Davidson hired a private lab, one that couldn't be connected to me or my lawyers. Marcus provided his sample willingly. Getting Emma's was more complicated. We need something with her DNA on it, Ray explained. A pacifier, a bottle, a piece of clothing with saliva or skin cells. Something that was definitely hers. How do we get that without Pam knowing? That's where it gets tricky. The solution came from an unexpected source, Jennifer. She called me on a Sunday evening, 2 weeks after my meeting with Marcus. Her voice was different than before. Uncertain, almost frightened. Ruth, I need to talk to you. I'm listening, not on the phone, in person. Can we meet somewhere private? We met at a park near my house, both of us bundled against the January cold. Jennifer looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was thinner than I remembered. Brian doesn't know I'm here, she said immediately. He would be furious. Then why are you here? She stared at the frozen pond in front of us for a long moment before answering. Because I've done something terrible, and I don't know how to fix it. Tell me. The story came out in fragments. Jennifer had met Pam at a charity event 3 years ago. They'd connected over shared frustrations. Jennifer feeling overshadowed by Thomas's success. Pam feeling cheated out of what she deserved. They'd become friends. Then conspirators. It started small, Jennifer said. Pam would ask questions about the family, about you and Thomas, about the business. I thought she was just curious. But she wasn't. No. She was building a case, looking for any weakness she could exploit. Jennifer turned to face me, her eyes red-rimmed. When she got pregnant, she told me the plan. Said Marcus was the father, but she was going to claim it was Thomas. Said with the right evidence, she could force a settlement worth millions. And you went along with it. I thought. She trailed off, shaking her head. I don't know what I thought. Pam made it sound so reasonable. She said you had more money than you could ever spend, that sharing some of it would barely affect your lifestyle, that Thomas had always been dismissive of her and this was just evening the score. My husband was dismissive of her because she spent 40 years trying to seduce him away from me. Jennifer's head snapped up. What? I told her about the letters, about Thomas's documentation of Pam's advances over the years, about his quiet vigilance in protecting me from the truth of my sister's nature. I didn't know any of that, Jennifer whispered. Pam said. She made it sound like they'd actually had an affair, like Thomas had promised to leave you for her. And you believed her. She had photos, text messages, things that looked real, fabricated, all of it, just like the paternity claim. Jennifer was crying now, tears freezing on her cheeks in the cold air. Ruth, I'm so sorry. I've destroyed everything. Brian thinks his father was a cheater. He barely speaks to me anymore because he's so consumed with all of this. Why are you telling me now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because watching Brian fall apart is killing me. Because Pam. She hesitated. What about Pam? She's not who I thought she was. Last week she told me she needs more money. Said if I didn't help her secure funding, she'd tell Brian about my involvement. She's blackmailing you. Yes, and I realized, this isn't going to end. She's never going to be satisfied. She's just going to keep taking and taking until there's nothing left. I studied my daughter-in-law's face. The fear was real. The remorse might be too, or it might just be self-preservation. Either way, she had something I needed. I need your help with something. Anything. I need you to get me something with the baby's DNA on it. A pacifier. A used bottle. Something I can have tested. Jennifer nodded slowly. I'm supposed to see Pam tomorrow. She asked me to babysit while she meets with her lawyers. Can you do it without her knowing? Yes, I can do that. I reached out and touched her arm. Jennifer, understand something. If you do this, you're choosing a side. Pam will never forgive you. And depending on what else you've been involved in, there may be legal consequences. I know. Are you prepared for that? She met my eyes, and for the first time I saw something like strength in her gaze. I've been preparing to lose everything since the moment I got involved with Pam's scheme. At least this way, I might be able to salvage something. My marriage, Brian's relationship with you, my own self-respect. All right, get me what I need. Then we'll talk about next steps. 3 days later, Jennifer delivered a sealed plastic bag containing a used pacifier and a baby bottle with dried milk residue inside. I handed them to Ray Davidson, who sent them to the lab along with Marcus Webb's DNA sample. The results came back in 48 hours. Marcus Webb was Emma's father. Probability, 97%. I sat in my kitchen with the report in my hands, feeling the weight of vindication settle over me. Not joy, not triumph, just the cold satisfaction of being right. The next step was calling Martin Reynolds. We have proof, I told him. DNA evidence that another man is the father. A witness willing to testify about his relationship with Pam. And a family member ready to expose the whole scheme. Ruth, this is excellent news. With this evidence, we can not only defeat the paternity claim, but potentially bring criminal charges for fraud and attempted extortion. I want more than that. What do you mean? I want Pam to know she was beaten by the people she manipulated. I want her to understand that her own greed brought her down. And I want my son to see exactly who his aunt really is. Martin was quiet for a moment. What do you have in mind? I told him. When I finished, he let out a long breath. That's bold, Ruth. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The plan was set in motion. All that remained was the confrontation, and making sure Brian was there to see it. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon in Martin Reynolds' conference room. Neutral territory, he called it. A place where everyone would be forced to maintain some semblance of civility. I arrived early, wanting to be seated when the others walked in. The room was impressive in that deliberate lawyer way. Mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Columbus skyline. The kind of space designed to remind everyone that money and power were at stake. Martin sat beside me, his briefcase open, documents arranged in neat piles. Across from us, empty chairs waited for Pam and her legal team. Are you ready? He asked quietly. I've been ready for months. The door opened at exactly 2 o'clock. Pam swept in first, wearing a designer suit I was certain she couldn't afford. Her hair and makeup camera ready as if she expected this to be broadcast on the evening news. Behind her came 2 lawyers in matching charcoal gray, carrying enough paperwork to fell a small forest. And behind them, Brian. My son looked worse than I'd ever seen him. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loosely on his shoulders. The confidence that had always defined him was gone, replaced by something hollow and uncertain. What is he doing here? Pam demanded, pointing at Brian like he was an unwelcome intruder. I invited him, I said. He's family. He deserves to hear the truth. Pam's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She took her seat at the head of the table, positioning herself like a queen holding court. Her lawyers flanked her on either side. Well, she said, spreading her hands, you called this meeting, Ruth. What do you want? I want to show you something. I nodded to Martin, who slid a document across the table. This is a DNA test. It establishes paternity for your daughter Emma. Pam's face went carefully blank. I told you, I'm not subjecting my child to... You didn't have to. We obtained a sample independently. Perfectly legal according to Ohio family court precedent. I watched Pam's composure crack, just slightly. A tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible clench of her jaw. "That's not possible. You had no access. Jennifer helped us." The name dropped into the room like a bomb. Pam's head whipped toward Brian, her expression shifting from composed to furious in an instant. "Jennifer?" Brian's voice was hoarse. "What does Jennifer have to do with this?" "Your wife has been working with your aunt for 3 years," I said, keeping my voice steady. "They planned this together. The pregnancy, the false paternity claim, the scheme to extort money from our family." "That's a lie," Pam snapped. "Jennifer was just a friend, someone I confided in." "Was she?" Martin opened another folder. "These are phone records showing over 2,000 calls and text messages between you and Jennifer Campbell over the past 3 years. These are bank records showing 6 separate cash transfers from Jennifer to you, totaling $47,000. And this," he slid a printed email across the table. "This is a communication between you and Jennifer, dated 8 months ago, discussing how to manage Ruth once the claim is filed." Brian picked up the email, his hands trembling. I watched his face as he read it, the color draining, the disbelief transforming into horror. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Is this real?" "It's real. All of it. Your aunt seduced a man named Marcus Webb, got pregnant on purpose, and then tried to pass the baby off as your father's child to steal half of his estate. And your wife helped her every step of the way." "Brian, listen to me," Pam said quickly. "Your mother is twisting everything. Jennifer and I were just friends. Those emails are taken out of context. The DNA test proves Marcus Webb is Emma's father," I continued. "Not your father. It was never possible for it to be your father because he had a vasectomy in 1988. Your aunt knew Thomas was sterile. She counted on no one believing me over her." Brian looked up from the email. His eyes found mine, and what I saw there broke my heart. Not anger, not accusation, just devastating, crushing shame. "I believed her," he whispered. "I believed Aunt Pam over you." "Yes, you did. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how. She had photos, text messages. She made it sound so real. All fabricated. Every single piece of evidence your aunt presented was manufactured to support a lie." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out Thomas's letters. "Your father saw through Pam years ago. He tried to protect me from her. He documented every time she approached him, every advance she made, every manipulation she attempted." I handed Brian the stack of letters. "He wrote these over 20 years. He never told me because he didn't want to damage my relationship with my sister. But he knew what she was. He always knew." Brian opened the first letter with shaking hands. As he read, tears began streaming down his face. "He loved you," he said. "God, Mom. He loved you so much. And I loved him. We loved each other for 40 years. Your aunt couldn't accept that. She couldn't accept that Thomas chose me and kept choosing me every single day of our marriage." Pam stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to—" "Sit down, Pamela." My voice was iron. "We're not finished. You can't tell me what to do. Actually, I can. Because right now, you're looking at criminal charges for fraud, attempted extortion, and filing false legal claims. The only way you walk out of this room without handcuffs is if you sit down and listen to what I have to say." Pam's lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them leaned over and whispered something in her ear. She sat down, her face white with fury. "Good. Now here's what's going to happen." I pulled out another document. "You're going to sign this statement acknowledging that Thomas Campbell is not the father of your child. You're going to drop all claims against his estate immediately. And you're going to agree never to contact me, my son, or anyone associated with our family again. And if I refuse, then I will pursue criminal charges to the fullest extent of the law. I will make sure every news outlet in Ohio knows what you tried to do. And I will spend whatever it takes to ensure you never have a moment's peace for the rest of your life." Pam laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You wouldn't. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you decided to desecrate my husband's memory. The moment you tried to convince my son that his father was a cheater and a liar. The moment you used a baby. Your own daughter, as a weapon in your scheme. I leaned forward, my voice dropping low. Do you have any idea what you've done to Brian? What your lies have cost him? I turned to my son, who was still clutching his father's letters, tears running unchecked down his face. Look at him, Pam. Look at what you've done. For months he's been tormented by doubt, questioning every memory he has of his father, wondering if everything he believed about his parents was a lie. He barely eats. He can't sleep. His marriage is destroyed. His trust in family, in the very concept of family, has been shattered. I stood up, my hands flat on the table. And for what? Money? Did you really think I would let you win? Did you really think you could steal from Thomas and I would just accept it? Pam's mask finally cracked. The composed, confident woman who had walked into this room was gone. In her place sat someone smaller, uglier. True. You've always thought you were better than me, she spat. With your perfect husband and your perfect life and your perfect son. You had everything. And what did I have? Nothing. Scraps from your table. I gave you $40,000 when you lost your job. I paid off your condo loan when you defaulted. I funded your divorce lawyer. I invited you into my home, my life, every holiday for 40 years. And you call that scraps? It wasn't enough. Her voice was rising now, losing control. Thomas should have been mine. He was going to be mine. We met at the same party. Did you know that? I saw him first. I was going to introduce myself, but you got there before me. You always got there before me. So this is about Thomas choosing me over you? 40 years ago? He made a mistake. He should have seen that I was the better choice. Thomas didn't make mistakes, Brian said suddenly. His voice was raw but steady, not about people, not about the people he loved. He set down the letters and looked at his aunt with eyes full of disgust. I read these. Every word. My father knew exactly who you were. He saw through you decades ago. And you know what? He felt sorry for you. He said you were broken, that something was missing in your heart that made you incapable of being happy for anyone else. Pam flinched like she'd been slapped. I believed you, Brian continued. You're my aunt, my mother's sister, I thought. I thought family wouldn't lie like that. Not about something this serious. Brian, you wanted money. His voice cracked. You wanted to take my mother's inheritance by pretending my father was unfaithful. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To find out, to think that my father, the man I idolized, had been lying to all of us. He stood up, knocking his chair backward. I couldn't look at his photo without feeling sick. I couldn't visit his grave because I was so angry at him. I treated my own mother like a suspect because your lies sounded more convincing than her truth. Brian, don't. He held up his hand. Don't say my name like we're still family. We're not. We haven't been since you decided my father's memory was worth less than a settlement check. He turned to me, his face crumpling. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how you can ever forgive me. I walked around the table and pulled my son into my arms. He collapsed against me, sobbing, all the weight of the past months finally releasing. You're my son, I said quietly. There's nothing to forgive. You were manipulated by people you trusted. That's not your fault. It's theirs. Over Brian's shoulder, I watched Pam. She sat alone now, her lawyers having retreated to a safe distance. Her makeup was smeared. Her designer suit looked rumpled and cheap. She looked exactly like what she was, a small, petty woman whose own greed had finally caught up with her. Sign the papers, I said, still holding Brian. Sign them and go. I never want to see you again. Pam picked up the pen with shaking hands. For a moment, I thought she might throw it across the room, might make one final stand, might try to salvage something from the wreckage she'd created, but whatever fight she'd had was gone. She signed where Martin indicated, dropped the pen on the table, and stood. This isn't over, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Yes, it is. It's been over since the moment Thomas had that vasectomy 35 years ago. You just didn't know it yet. Pam walked out without another word. Her lawyers followed, leaving behind their stacks of useless paperwork like rats abandoning a sinking ship. And then it was just Brian and me, standing in the conference room, holding on to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. I love you, Mom, Brian whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. I always have. I always will. Can we go home? To your house? I don't think I can go back to. He trailed off. Jennifer will have some questions to answer, but that's a conversation for another day. Today, we go home. Together, we walked out of that conference room with our arms around each other. The sun was setting over Columbus, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was the first beautiful thing I'd noticed in months. The battle was over, but the healing was just beginning. Spring came early that year. By March, the crocuses in my garden were already pushing through the last patches of snow, purple and yellow against the gray. Thomas had planted them our first year in this house, back when we were young and the future stretched ahead like an open road. I was kneeling in the dirt, clearing away dead leaves, when Brian's car pulled into the driveway. He'd been coming by twice a week since January, rebuilding something that should never have been broken. "Mom, you shouldn't be doing that," he said, walking across the lawn. "I can hire someone. I like doing it. Keeps me close to your father." He knelt beside me, not caring about his dress pants getting muddy. Brian had changed in the months since the confrontation. Lost the hollow look, put back the weight, started sleeping again, started living again. "I brought you something," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $47,000. "What's this?" "The money Jennifer transferred to Pam. I recovered it from our joint accounts." He paused. "I know it's not restitution. You didn't lose that money, but I wanted you to have it anyway, for the foundation, the Thomas Campbell Memorial Foundation. We'd launched it in February, using a portion of the estate to fund scholarships for first-generation college students. Thomas had been one himself, working his way through Ohio State while supporting his mother. He would have loved seeing his money help others do the same. "Thank you, sweetheart. Your father would be proud." Brian sat back on his heels, squinting against the spring sun. "I signed the divorce papers yesterday. How do you feel?" "Relieved, mostly. Sad, a little. I thought I knew her. Turns out I didn't know anything." Jennifer had confessed everything after the confrontation. The years of conversations with Pam, the shared resentment, the gradual slide from complaining about family to actively conspiring against it. She claimed she'd never meant for things to go so far, that she'd been swept up in something she didn't understand until it was too late. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, Brian couldn't stay with someone who had helped his aunt try to destroy his mother. Some betrayals are too deep to survive. "Have you heard from her?" I asked. "Jennifer?" "She texts sometimes. I don't respond." "I meant Pam." Brian's jaw tightened. "No, and I don't expect to." My sister had retreated into silence after signing the papers. She'd kept Emma, of course. Marcus Webb had decided he didn't want to be a father after all. Too complicated, he said. Too much history. He'd taken the $10,000 I'd paid him, plus a small settlement from Pam's lawyers, and disappeared to somewhere out west. I thought about Emma sometimes. That innocent baby, born into a scheme, named as a weapon in a war she'd never understand. Part of me hoped Pam would do right by her, would find some way to be a real mother instead of using her as a prop. But I couldn't fix Pam. I'd spent 40 years trying and failing. Some people don't want to be fixed. They want to be pitied. And when that doesn't work, they want to be paid. "Mom?" Brian's voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you okay?" "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how much your father would have enjoyed this spring. He always said the garden looked best in March, when everything was just starting to bloom." Brian was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and took my hand, his fingers muddy from helping me weed. "I visited his grave yesterday," he said. "First time since the funeral. I sat there for an hour, just talking to him, telling him I was sorry for doubting him, for believing lies about who he was." "What did he say back?" Brian smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Nothing, obviously, but I felt, I don't know, forgiven, maybe, at peace. That's all Thomas ever wanted, for the people he loved to be at peace. We finished the gardening together, then went inside for lunch. The house felt different now, still full of Thomas's presence, his books, his photographs, the indent in his favorite chair, but no longer haunted. The grief had softened into something gentler, memory instead of pain, love instead of loss. After Brian left, I sat in Thomas's office, surrounded by his things. The letters I'd found in his closet were in a new box now, organized by date, read and reread until I knew them almost by heart. I pulled out my favorite, the one he'd written on our 30th anniversary. My dearest Ruth, 30 years. I can hardly believe it. I remember our wedding day like it was yesterday. You walking down the aisle in your mother's dress. The way you smiled when you saw me waiting at the altar. The way my heart felt like it was going to burst right out of my chest. People say marriage is hard work. They're wrong. Loving you has never been work. It's been the easiest thing I've ever done. Every morning I wake up grateful that you chose me. Every night I fall asleep knowing I'm the luckiest man alive. I don't know how many years we have left together, but I know this. When my time comes, I want my last thought to be of you, of your smile, of your voice, of the life we built together. You are my home, Ruth. You always have been. Forever yours, Thomas. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the box. Then I went to the window and looked out at the garden, where the crocuses Thomas had planted were blooming in the late afternoon light. He'd gotten his wish. His last thought, according to the doctors, had probably been of me. He'd turned the steering wheel to protect me, given his life so I could keep mine. I hadn't understood that fully until now. The depth of it, the weight of it. Thomas hadn't just loved me. He'd loved me enough to die for me, and Pam had tried to make that love into something dirty, into betrayal and lies and stolen children. She'd tried to rewrite our story, to turn Thomas into a cheater and me into a fool. She'd failed. Not because I was smarter than her. Not because I had better lawyers or more money. She'd failed because the truth was stronger than her lies. Because 40 years of faithful love couldn't be erased by fabricated photos and falsified documents. Because Thomas had protected me even from beyond the grave, leaving behind letters that proved exactly who he was. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. When I opened it, I found a young woman on my porch, holding a manila envelope. Mrs. Campbell? I'm Sarah Chen from the Tribune. I was wondering if you had time to answer a few questions. About what? About the Thomas Campbell Memorial Foundation. We're doing a feature on local philanthropists, and your foundation has been making quite an impact. 23 scholarships in just 2 months. I hesitated. I'd avoided press attention throughout the legal battle, not wanting to give Pam any additional platforms for her lies. But that was over now. And Thomas's legacy deserved to be told. Come in, Sarah. I'd be happy to tell you about my husband. We sat in the living room, surrounded by photographs of Thomas at various stages of his life. As I talked about the foundation, about his values, about the man he'd been, I felt something shift inside me. For months, I'd been defending Thomas's memory, fighting against lies, protecting what was real from what was fabricated. But Sarah wasn't asking about any of that. She was asking about his life, his work, his impact. He sounds like an incredible man, she said when I finished. He was. The best man I've ever known. And the foundation. It's going to continue as long as I'm alive. And after that, Brian will take over. Thomas believed everyone deserved a chance to succeed, regardless of where they started. That belief will outlive both of us. Sarah left an hour later with enough material for her feature. I walked her to the door, feeling lighter than I had in months. The story that would be told now wasn't about scandals or inheritance disputes. It was about love and legacy and the good that one person could do in the world. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. Thomas's headstone gleamed white against the green grass, freshly mowed for spring. I sat down beside it, not caring about my nice clothes, and leaned against the cold marble. You were right, I said to the empty air. About all of it, about Pam, about keeping records, about protecting me even when I didn't know I needed protecting. A bird sang somewhere in the trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the graves. Brian's going to be okay. He's coming back to himself. And the foundation is helping people. Young people who remind me of you, back when you were just starting out. I touched the carved letters of his name, Thomas Edward Campbell, beloved husband and father. I'm going to be okay too. It took me a while to get here, but I'm okay now. I miss you every day, but missing you doesn't hurt the way it used to. It's more like, carrying you with me, everywhere I go. The sky was turning purple and gold, Thomas's favorite time of day. I'll visit again soon, and I'll bring flowers next time. Those purple crocuses you planted. They're blooming like crazy this year. I stood up slowly, brushing grass from my skirt. As I turned to leave, I paused for one last look at the headstone. Thank you, I whispered, for 40 years of love, for protecting me, for showing me what it means to really be loved. Then I walked back to my car, climbed in, and drove home through the fading light. The house was waiting for me, full of memories and possibility. Tomorrow, I would have breakfast with Brian. Next week, the foundation was hosting its first scholarship dinner. Next month, I was planning a trip to Italy, something Thomas and I had always talked about but never done. Life was continuing. Not the life I'd expected, but a life nonetheless. A life shaped by love and loss, and the determination to honor what had been given to me. My sister had tried to take everything from me. She'd failed, because she'd never understood what I truly had. Not money, not property, not social standing or legal victories. I had 40 years of real love, letters written in secret, saved for when I would need them most. A son who had found his way back from doubt to faith. A legacy that would help young people for generations to come. I had Thomas, still, always. And that was something no one could ever steal. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.